Ever since his debut, it's the battle everybody's been waiting for. Weapon H, Hulk, and Wolverine? What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is an iRate review, the show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something you need to go back to the comic book shop for or not. Make sure you subscribe to get more of these every single week. The book that I want to talk about right now is Hulkverines #1, a 3-part miniseries written by Greg Pak, which brings us toe-to-toe with Hulk, Weapon H, and Wolverine himself. However, this isn't going to be your necessarily familiar fare when it comes to hero-on-hero-on-hero combat. There's a story that's going to be underlying this, and hopefully it's going to make it a little bit more than just an action blockbuster without a lot of depth. But Greg Pak loves to write these characters, so hopefully he can put something special between the pages. It's the story we've all been waiting for. Bruce Banner, Weapon H, and the Wolverine coming toe-to-toe. Or at least that's what Marvel seems to think. The way that we begin is actually inside some sort of shadow-based remote facility, a detention center, where we are holding one of the most dangerous villains that Hulk has ever come across, the Leader, one of the smartest enemies he's ever had. And while this agent presents him with the information about the Hulk returning, as well as some of his new skills, we actually see the Leader slowly calculate and form a plan that is going to lead to his freedom and ultimately the demise of the Hulk, as he rolls up a piece of paper, stabs the agent in the eye, takes a spare piece of paper, throws it on the ground, allowing the other guard to slip, fall, break his neck, and make his escape. And at that point in time, we see a recap of some of the events that have happened inside the Immortal Hulk, written by Al Ewing. So Greg Pak is taking into account continuity and creating a situation that would actually be plausible inside the Marvel Universe. So while the Immortal Hulk is on TV battling the Avengers, which was from Immortal Hulk #7, we see Clayton Cortez with his family at the events of Weapon H, which has been going on for over a year now. He's actually come to an agreement where him, his wife, and his children can live a relatively normal life. And that's when we see the contrast between how Bruce Banner and Clayton Cortez have been living their lives. Bruce has been keeping his head low, riding on buses against people that are not necessarily his favorite, and he's making his way across the country with a purpose, while Clay has been dealing with his family, playing out in the rain, having a great time, living this somewhat normal life, until they get back home and they start checking in on their secret agent style lives. And what we see in the background as this family is going through its home is a small buzz and a smack on the back of Clayton's neck, and then ultimately he starts to sneeze. This isn't something that should be happening to the Hulkverine, as his kids have called him. He's got a healing factor. He's the Hulk. He should be impervious to these kinds of earthborne diseases, and that's just not the case, as he starts to kind of lose control over his faculties. His claws extend, and Plan C has gone into action. The family is going away to be safe, leaving Clay on his own to handle the situation, and while his wife looks at him lovingly, saying that he's the strongest, he obviously knows that his wife is the strong one that's keeping everything together. And prowling around in the backwoods, we actually see Bruce Banner, and this is where we get the first conflict and confrontation between Bruce Banner and Clay Cortez. While they're talking about what's going on, Clay sneezes, and that brings out his claws, and Bruce realizes that something is wrong with him. It's not quite the situation he was expecting, but Clay isn't going to put this on hold so that way they can talk things out. He's got his claws out, he starts leaping at Bruce Banner, and is about to gut him like a fish when the sun starts to go down and things go outside Bruce Banner's control. The green eyes flush with gamma radiation as they both convert into the Hulk and Weapon H, which is a really cool splash page. I have to say that the spectacle of Bruce Banner changing into the Hulk and the spectacle of Clay changing into Weapon H is a really fun part of this book, and that's half of the reason that you'd want to read it. You'd want to see the fights between these two gigantic titans, these characters, and what happens. However, while that splash page seems to be rendered out very well, we get into the second pages and the actual combat, and things tend to be a bit more chaotic. The line work on the boxes is relatively rough. The characters aren't necessarily as well rendered, so it leads us to believe that while we're in the throes of this battle, it's almost shattering or shaking to the point where you can't even draw it correctly with the titanic punches that are being exchanged by these two characters. The Leader looks on while Shadowbase confronts him, while Hulk grabs onto the hands of Weapon H and starts to drain the gamma from his body, reducing him to nothing. But the one thing that he wasn't accounting for is the fact that Clay Cortez is sick, and the draining of the gamma radiation is going to make the Hulk sick as well. And this is all the plan of the leader, as he starts to explain in a kind of voiceover the idea that with this gamma draining powers, he wasn't going to be able to get so close to the Hulk. He couldn't go toe-to-toe with him without being a little bit more crafty, because the Hulk himself has become relatively crafty as well. So what he did was infect Weapon H with a gamma-altering virus. He then staged the combat between Weapon H and Hulk so that way Hulk would use his gamma-draining powers and obtain this virus, weakening him so that way he's more manageable. And ultimately, the downfall of the Hulk in his hands, he strides up to Weapon H, asking, "Why aren't you just going to run him through? Kill him! Otherwise, your family's going to be in danger." I know all about Plan C, but Clayton Cortez is not one to be manipulated in that sense, especially when talking about his family. Through the entire run of Weapon H, that has been the single most important factor in Clayton Cortez's life. His family. So immediately he just starts running after the leader, trying to take him out. The adamantium shards from these bombs that were thrown by him, gouging out his eyes, leading him into the woods. It's not like he needs to see. He's got the senses of Wolverine, so he's smelling him down, leaping at him like an animal, about to stab him right through the back when sling! Other claws have come out, and a person is protecting the leader that we weren't quite expecting. And Wolverine stands there, ready to throw down with the new Weapon H. And that's where we're going to end issue number 1 of the 3-part miniseries from Greg Pak. I have to be honest with you, it's not necessarily the most sophisticated writing, it's not the most original kind of concept, but the conflict between Weapon H, Hulk, and Wolverine is something of childhood fantasy. It's one of those stories where you just want to see the biggest, most titanic heroes going toe-to-toe, and the most popular just kind of smashing on each other to see who's going to come out alive, or how long it takes for them to be friends, and ultimately go after the biggest bad. The one thing that I will say is that while Greg Pak is an accomplished writer and he sets things up pretty well, I am a little bit hesitant about the actual art, because even though the consistency and the inconsistency of the characters seems to represent different points in time during the story, it's just the style isn't quite in my wheelhouse. It bounces from really well-rendered scenes to things that are a little bit more simple but chaotic, and I think that that's on purpose. I can't really put myself into the actual mind of the artist when he was creating it, but I can say as a person reading this, it does throw me off a little bit. However, it's not going to keep me from reading the next 2 issues. I wasn't really sure about picking up this entire miniseries, but if you're looking for Hulk versus Weapon H versus Wolverine, and you want that kind of superhero combat, it's going to be a really fun take on this, while they're actually trying to figure out and solve a problem that they're all really having. But I want to know what you guys think about Hulkverines number 1, so hit me up in the comments down below, and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.